Curious about taking a gap year for chemical engineering? Watch this first. Hey there, welcome to ChemEngWeekly. Deciding to take a gap year before university is not always easy. There's a lot of thought that goes behind it, and there's often different reasons for why people take one. In this video, we will cover the different reasons for why people take a gap year, whether it's a good idea, and some general advice about those considering taking a gap year. And since this channel is all about chemical engineering, we will do this in the context of undergraduate admissions, so make sure you like and subscribe to get the full content and watch until the end to get all the information. Without much further ado, let's get right into the video. First up, why take a gap year? There are many different reasons as to why people take a gap year, and within the context of chemical engineering, this can be quite wide scoping, especially since the application process can be quite different depending on which universities you're applying to. It's important to list all the reasons for taking a gap year at this point in the video so you can extract the maximum value from this video. I've put the different links to different things we talk about within the timestamp descriptions within the description of this video, so make sure you check that out if there's anything in specific you want to jump to. Some people know they want to take a gap year even before they apply to university, whilst others make it as a last-minute decision after receiving their A-level results. So what are the reasons that people take a gap year for? The first reason that some people take a gap year is to put a bit of a buffer between their high schooling education or pre-university education and their degree education for chemical engineering, whether that be to travel, undertake different projects, not feeling ready for university education, or saving up for uni itself. And they often know before they even apply to the university that this is what they want to do. In this case, they usually take a deferred entry, which is the best option, whereby you apply for the year after the normal application cycle for everyone. For example, if you're applying for the 2025 to 26 year, you'd apply for the 2026 to 27 year instead, which you can declare on your UCAS. But of course, if you don't know that you want to do this before you put your application in, you can always speak to your UCAS coordinator after you've applied to change the year of your entry. Some students take a gap year due to necessity of grades and applications. This is because they don't receive the grades they need to get into university and so have to resit some exams in either the October cycle for A-levels or IBs or equivalents, or the final year cycle, which means they will have to take a gap year if they really want to go to university. And this is a perfectly valid reason as well. Another reason why some people take a gap year is because they don't get the desired university offers that they wanted, and there's a multitude of reasons for this which we will get into later in the video, but this is also a perfectly valid reason. And the final reason that some people take a gap year before doing ChemEng is because they're unsure of doing chemical engineering itself. Alas, this is a topic for a different video which we will do on whether ChemEng is the right career path for you or not, so that we won't be discussing in this video. Next, is a gap year a good idea? Now, this is completely down to the discretion of the context of your gap year, and if it's in the first case we discussed, whereby you're taking a deferred entry to go and explore life and do different things such as travelling, it's definitely a good idea, especially if you can get some experience within that year to showcase that you're actually very motivated to do chemical engineering, such as some off-cycle internships, experience, shadow schemes or other things during that year off. And this can definitely be a big bonus when you move forward to start your degree. An important thing to note is if you are taking a gap year for the first reason, it's best to keep reviewing your A-level or pre-university equivalent maths, chemistry and physics so that you keep in the loop with the knowledge you need for when you start your degree and don't fall behind. Another instance where a gap year would be a good idea is when you haven't got the grades you needed and you need to resit, since universities don't allow you to get the grades after they've let you into their university if its minimum requirements have not been met. So in this case, you would have no option but to take a gap year, especially if you want to go to that particular university. And the third instance of when it's a good idea to take a gap year is when you have not received the desired offer you wanted for university. However, the answer to this is much more nuanced based on the situation, and we'll break down every situation that you could find yourself in, or at least most of them, to gauge whether it is a good idea to take a gap year and what you should do during that time. If you find yourself in this position, the first thing you should do is go back and review your entire application from start to finish and realise why you didn't get the desired university offer that you were looking for, whether this be down to your grades, your personal statement, your UCAS application, interviews, or admissions assessments for Oxbridge and some of the other universities. So it's very vitally important that you do take out the time to review all of this information before deciding whether a gap year will be viable for you. If you applied to all university options that had greater grade requirements than what you were predicted and achieved, it might be worth resitting the whole year and reapplying to get into these universities. But you should only do this if you are willing to resit the university required qualifications to get into university and make more informed decisions with your application in the first place. So, for example, if you achieved and were predicted 3 Bs, but you applied for universities requiring 3 As and above and got rejected from all of them either before your results were released or after your results were released, you should definitely consider whether you actually really want to go to that university, and then consider resitting in the next cycle either in the autumn exam series or the summer exam series to get the grades you need, i.e. 3 As and above, because this is what you put down, and then also considering changing your application so that you apply for 3 universities that require 3 Bs and 2 universities that require 1 or 2 grades above, such as A and 2 Bs or 2 As and a B. The reason for this is because the 3 Bs are what you have already achieved and therefore will be your surefire options that you should get into because these grades you already have to hand, whilst the ABB and AAB should be something that are viable given if your resits go well. Before making this decision, it's vitally important that you are completely honest with yourself and realistic in your ambitions, because if you think you cannot exceed your 3 Bs that you achieved, it would be more important to just apply for 5 university choices at 3 Bs and then have an option of 5 when they give you the offers, or at least have the option of a couple when they give you the offers, so that your chances of going to university are greatly increased, because then there'll be no point of reapplying and not resitting, as your options of 3 Bs would not get you into the minimum requirements for the university and would end up with another rejection. Therefore, it's vitally important that you seriously gauge your own capabilities, and if you do not think you can exceed what you have already achieved and do not want to resit, then perhaps it would be a viable option to go through clearing once your results have released. The process for clearing I have covered in the UCAS Applications Explained video, which you can find in the iCard section now. Another instance could be you were predicted lower grades, but you ended up achieving higher grades after getting rejected from all your universities. So going back to our previous example, if you were predicted 3 Bs and you applied to all universities with 3 As or higher, but got rejected from all of them from before results day, and then went on to achieve 3 As at results day, you'd be able to reapply at the next cycle and perhaps get in. In this instance, it would first be a good idea to try and get into your desired university choice through clearing. Again, I have explained clearing through the UCAS Explained video, which you can find in the iCard section from the previous card. And it would be a good idea to first get in through clearing, as I have said, but then also try reapply if you don't get in via that method. Since you now have those 3 As that the university required from you, you'd have a much better improved chance of getting the offer that you want, and it would make more sense to go and put all 5 options as 3 As if you do not plan on resitting, or choosing the other option of going 2 at 1 or 2 grades above and 3 at your current grade requirements, so that you have the best option of going to the university of your choice. The next instance, which is by far the most complicated out of all the instances, is when your grades were exceeding or hitting the minimum requirements for your desired university choice, but you still did not get an offer. There could be a multitude of reasons for your rejection from your university choice, as the UCAS application process has many different parts, so it's vitally important that you go through and review which part of your university application failed. In this instance, you can sometimes email the universities requesting for feedback if they've not already given this to you for why you were rejected, and here they will outline one of 5 key things. A, your personal statement was not what they were looking for. B, your UCAS application contained mistakes or was not completed properly. C, you did not perform well at interview. D, you did not show the correct motivations to do the degree. Or E, you did not do well enough in the admissions assessments as you were required to. The last part only mainly falls onto those that have applied to Oxbridge or the University of Edinburgh from an international perspective, because those are the only university options for chemical engineering that require admissions assessments at time of recording. After reviewing your application, if you find that your personal statement or your UCAS application was not up to scratch, it would be a good idea to take a gap year, provided you have the ability and know that you realistically can go back and improve your UCAS personal statement and application to get it up to the standards required. This means it would only be a good idea if you genuinely will go back and improve your personal statements, such as go back and do more activities or include more things that show you have a passion for chemical engineering, such as wider reading activities, attending sample lectures and more, or whether you can go back and fix your UCAS application and make sure that you rerun it through your UCAS coordinator a couple of times, because otherwise it would be counterintuitive to go back and take a gap year, as you will simply find yourself in the same position a whole year later. it would be best to make an active effort to try and see what you can improve before your deadline approaches, whether that's the early application deadline or the late deadline. So you'd have to make sure that you've hit all the points by October or January, depending on which universities you're applying to. You can view videos on how to write successful personal statements in the iCard section of this video, as well as more that you will find later on after this video in the channel timeline. Another instance where you have the minimum requirements but you were still rejected is your interview did not go well. This would only really apply if you're applying to chemical engineering at Oxbridge, Manchester or Imperial at current time of recording, and it's vitally important that you go back and ask for feedback from your interviewers for why your interview was not successful and what you should do to improve. There are many tips available on how to pass your interviews on this channel for Oxbridge, Manchester and Imperial, so you should make sure you check out those videos. And if you want to go to Oxbridge, Manchester or Imperial but did not have the grades so got rejected pre-interview, it'd be a better idea to resit and reapply once you get those grades, but only if you realistically think you have a chance of getting those grades before application. The question that often comes up at this point is, how are you supposed to achieve the grades for Oxbridge if you won't sit them until autumn, which is after the October 15th deadline? And the answer to this is you can put this in your SAQ for Cambridge, or you can email it off as part of your UCAS application to Oxford when you explain to them that you are still trying to achieve those grades, and this is when they often will still consider your application. The next instance is when you really want to do chemical engineering but you did not have the correct pre-university qualifications to get in, namely a maths and chemistry A-level or international equivalent. In this case, doing a gap year would be a good idea if you plan on resitting or taking these for the first time, such as taking a maths A-level at the end of your gap year or even an AS depending on what your university would require. You can always communicate with them via email to work out what they would require from you, but if you do not think that this would be within your remit, you can still take the gap year as a good idea and apply for something called a foundation year. This is something that we'll cover in more videos on this channel, but it mainly and primarily aims to reskill and equip you with the correct skills to enter into university degree for chemical engineering, and is offered by many universities. So you should definitely do your research and consider if this is something that would be viable for you if you do not think that you can get the correct qualifications in time by taking a gap year. And finally, general advice. As I have mentioned earlier in this video, the most important thing for taking a gap year, if you are reapplying and resitting, is to understand what part of your application went wrong. Because by not understanding what part of your application went wrong, you can't improve it, and therefore you can't get into the university choice that you desire. It is vitally important that you are realistic and honest with yourself, with your ambitions for your gap year, as often the case has been when you are not realistic or honest with yourself during your gap year, your ambitions are often not met because you do not fully appreciate what you are able to do within your application cycle. If you know that you have had a tough year applying and you have had extenuating circumstances, then it's definitely advisable to speak to a UCAS coordinator and see what the best advice they can give, as often universities have specific schemes and allowances in place, as well as bursaries, for those that are in this position. The best time to make a final decision on whether you should take a gap year or not is after hearing back from all 5 of your university options, or after results day, as these are the 2 major times that affect your UCAS application and university future the most, and would give you the clearest idea of what is a possibility and what isn't a possibility moving forward. And again, I would reiterate, definitely speak to a UCAS coordinator because they can give you the most realistic advice and expectations from if you decide to take a gap year for chemical engineering or not. If you do decide to take a gap year, not because of deferred entry reasons, but because of resitting and reapplying reasons, then it's very important that you try to extract maximum benefit from those resources that you have available to you, such as the videos on this channel, anything your UCAS coordinator can provide, as well as those in your extended network who maybe are doing chemical engineering or a related degree at the university you would like to go to. So make sure you really spend the time and put the effort in to make sure your application is a success. The best place to start if you're still undecided about taking a gap year is discussing with your friends and family and of course your UCAS coordinator, as these people are usually best placed to give you their honest, unfiltered opinions of what they think you should do given your situation. And every situation is different, so it's vitally important that you take the time out to really consider and give serious thought about whether doing a gap year would be a good idea. Thank you for watching the video. Be sure to like it if you enjoyed it and leave your comments and suggestions down in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels, and if you click on the on-screen cards now, you can watch another one of our videos. Click on the centre card to subscribe, and don't forget to share this video if you found it useful. Further information can be found in the description, and thank you very much.